On a warm July afternoon in 1874, two little boys are out front in Germantown, Philadelphia. It's the kind of neighborhood where parents think they can glance up from their chores and everything will still be fine. Then a wagon rolls in. Two men smile. They offer candy. They talk about fireworks. And in a matter of minutes, one brother is left standing in the yard and the other is gone. This is the story of Charley Ross, a 4-year-old whose disappearance didn't just break a family. It helped shape how America thinks about missing children, ransom, policing, and that warning practically everyone has heard at some point. Don't take candy from strangers. And it's important to say right up front, this isn't one of those cases with a neat ending. There's no reunion, no confirmed answer, just a trail that cools off, a family that waits, and a country that slowly realizes something that feels obvious now, but didn't then. Children can be taken, and money can be the motive. So let's back up. Charley's full name was Charles Brewster Ross. He was born May 4th, 1870. By 1874, he's a little kid in a busy house. Parents, siblings, the normal rhythms of life in a quiet suburb. His father, Christian K. Ross, was a wholesale grocer. Respected, known in the community. But financially, things were tight. And that detail matters later, because when ransom is demanded, the question isn't just, would you pay? It becomes, could you even pay if you wanted to? Now, the day Charley disappears, July 1st, 1874. Charley is outside playing with his older brother, Walter. Two men approach in a wagon. They're strangers, but they're friendly strangers, the kind that feels safe in a world where people still often assume the best. They chat. They tempt. Candy is offered. Fireworks are promised. And you can picture it, right? Two kids thinking this is the biggest luck of their whole week. The men suggest a ride to go get fireworks. Charley and Walter climb in. The wagon rolls away. And then, at some point, the men stop. Walter is told to get out, sent off, basically dismissed. And the wagon pulls away again, with Charley still inside. That moment becomes the nightmare snapshot. One brother watching the other disappear down the road. If you've ever wondered where that "don't take candy from strangers" idea gets its traction in American culture, this story is one of the roots. Not the only one, but a major one. And then comes the part that turns this from a local tragedy into a national shock: the letters. Within days, the Ross family starts receiving ransom demands. Not rumors, not vague threats, actual correspondence demanding money. $20,000. In 1874, that's not a lot. That's an almost impossible sum. The kind of number that tells you the kidnappers are either wildly confident or completely detached from the family's reality. These notes are historically significant for another reason. They're often described as the first documented ransom letters in American criminal history. They come in over months, summer into winter, July through December of 1874. And they don't read like desperate pleas. They're taunting, mocking even. That's what gets me. Whoever wrote them seemed to enjoy the power of it. The letters insist Charley will be returned only if the demands are met. But Christian Ross, already under financial strain, doesn't have a vault of cash sitting around. And any parent listening might be thinking, you'd sell everything, right? You'd burn your life down to pay it. But in reality, especially then, there were limits. Money didn't move fast. Banks didn't work like they do now. Debt could swallow you whole. And even if you scraped it together, could you trust the people taking your child? Exactly. That's the cruel trap of ransom. Pay, and you might lose the money and the child. Don't pay, and you live with the what if for the rest of your life. As this unfolds, the case catches fire in the press. Newspapers across the country start printing Charley's likeness. Think about that in the 1870s, printing images, distributing them widely, people reading and talking about a missing child hundreds of miles away. It becomes one of the earliest examples of a missing child story turning into a national media event. Parents start watching their own kids differently. Neighbors look twice at unfamiliar wagons. People start asking, do we really know who's safe? Police chase leads across Pennsylvania and into New York. Tips pour in, and with big cases, that's always this double-edged thing. You're grateful people care, but you can drown in bad information. And you also have policing in that era, no modern databases, no centralized systems, no quick communication the way we imagine it now. Even with effort, the machinery to track someone across distance just wasn't what it is today. Eventually, investigators focus on a few names. The biggest two are Bill Mosher and Joe Douglas, career criminals who end up right at the center of the suspicion. Mosher is killed during a burglary only months after Charley vanishes, and Douglas, after being shot, is said to have confessed while dying. He allegedly admits that he and Mosher took Charley. But here's the punch to the gut. Even with that alleged confession, there's no answer to the one question that matters most. Where is Charley? What happened after the wagon rolled away? Douglas never gives up the final piece. Then there's William Westervelt, a former Philadelphia police officer. He's accused of helping the kidnappers, someone with insider knowledge, someone who would understand how investigations worked. Westervelt goes to trial in 1875, and the verdict is complicated. He's found not guilty of kidnapping, but guilty of conspiracy. He's sentenced to 6 years in prison. Yet, even with prison time, even with this cloud over him, he never provides a credible explanation of Charley's fate. No location, no proof, no closure. And that's the reality of this case. It keeps offering almost answers. A suspicious death, a confession without details, a conviction that still doesn't bring a child home. Over the years, people come forward claiming they're Charley. Can you imagine the emotional chaos of that for the family? Someone shows up, says, "It's me," and for a moment your world cracks open with hope, and then the tests of the era, the evidence, the timelines, none of it holds. The ransom letters stop. The leads thin out. Public attention drifts, because it always drifts, even when the family can't. And Charley Ross is never found. Which brings us to the question people still ask. Why does this case matter now? Why are we still talking about an abduction that happened in 1874? Because it changed things. It's one of the first moments where Americans collectively confront kidnapping for ransom as a real threat, not just a rare rumor. It helped push the idea that you can't assume a friendly adult is harmless. It also influenced policing, early thinking around missing persons, coordinated searches, tracking suspects across jurisdictions. It's primitive compared to today, but the pressure from the public and press forced law enforcement to treat a missing child as a major case. And culturally it sticks. The image is so simple, it's almost unbearable. A wagon, a promise of candy, a brother sent away, and a 4-year-old carried off into history. A nation learned, maybe for the first time at that scale, that children could be stolen for money. And that realization echoes into how families parent, how communities warn, and how the media covers these tragedies. So when you hear "don't take candy from strangers," it can sound like a cliche. But behind that cliche is a real child, a real front yard, a real brother left standing there, watching the wagon shrink into the distance, and a family who never got to stop wondering. That's the story of Charley Ross, America's first ransom kidnapping to grip the national imagination, and one of its longest, quietest mysteries. If this episode stayed with you, take a moment and ask yourself, how many of the safety rules we grow up with have a name and a face behind them? Sometimes history isn't distant. Sometimes it's a warning that never stopped being relevant.